Tragus T.J. Colton, a country music sensation, recently gave an interview to Rolling Stone in which he discussed a significant turning point in his career that ultimately drove him to give up alcohol for forever. The singer-songwriter, who is 32 years old and is famous for songs such as Whiskey Road and Heartbreak Highway, disclosed that a terrible performance at Bryan's Crash My Playa music festival in 2023 served as the wake-up call that he required in order to commit to sobriety. Colton, who is quickly becoming a prominent figure in the country music world, had been riding high on the success of his debut album, Dusty Boots, which had achieved platinum status just a few months prior to the festival. A passionate fan base had been garnered by him as a result of his rough appeal, soulful voice, and lyrics that were relevant about life in a small town and heartbreak. On the other hand, behind the scenes, Colton was struggling with a growing dependence on alcohol. This habit, which had begun as a means of coping with the pressures of celebrity, eventually turned into a destructive force. It began in a manner that was somewhat innocent, Colton admits. In order to relax before a performance, I'll have a beer here and a shot of whiskey there. But by the time I arrived at Crash My Playa, I had already had a great deal more alcohol than I ought to have. It was no longer about having fun, rather, it was about having to have it in order to make it through the day. One of the most anticipated events in the world of country music is the annual Crash My Playa festival, which takes place in Riviera Maya, Mexico. This festival attracts thousands of fans for a weekend filled with sun, sand, and live performances from some of the most popular singers in the industry. The festival's host, Bryan, had personally extended an invitation to Colton to perform, which is a testament to the growing influence that he is having in the industry. This was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for Colton, as it gave him the chance to perform on stage among legendary artists like Bryan, Chris Stapleton, and Dierks Bentley. Nevertheless, on the second night of the event, the fantasy turned into a nightmare. It was clear that Colton had been drinking significantly throughout the day since he appeared extremely intoxicated when he took the stage. After then, a performance that was a train wreck was delivered, which was described by both fans and critics alike. I forgot the words to my own songs, Colton recounted, his voice resonating with the profound sense of regret he felt. It was slurring, I was staggering around, and I was knocking over microphone stands. At one point, I attempted to share a story about my grandfather, but it ended up being a rambling speech that was completely nonsensical. Despite the fact that the crowd was jeering, I could see Luke and his team standing in the wings, looking horrified. Fans who were present at the occasion posted on social media that portrayed a gloomy picture. TJ Colton is a mess at Crash My Playa, tweeted one user who was present at the event. This guy is in need of assistance. And further individual shared a video that was fuzzy and showed Colton attempting to play his guitar. But he was missing chords and giggling inappropriately as the crowd became increasingly restless. When he finally walked off the stage, the damage had already been done. The next day, the headlines were devastating. TJ Colton's drunken disaster at Crash My Playa and country star's meltdown shocks fans. Both of these headlines were published. Colton did not have to read the headlines in order to realize that he had reached his lowest point. I woke up the next morning in my hotel room, still in my stage clothes, with no memory of how I got there, he explained to reporters. My manager was blowing up my phone, and I had a voicemail from Luke personally, checking in but also letting me know how upset he was. Both of these messages were quite disappointing. That was the most excruciating pain of all. The repercussions were rushed. The remaining festival appearances that Colton was scheduled to make were cancelled by his team, claiming personal health issues. A number of rumors circulated that his record company had terminated his contract. However, his team swiftly refuted these rumors. On the other hand, some fans showed concern for his well-being, while others felt deceived and accused him of squandering his gift. Fans were divided. The event that brought Colton to his lowest point was when he watched a video of his performance that had been filmed by a fan. It was then that he claimed, "I didn't even recognize myself." This was not the individual who had spent his childhood singing in church or the one who had written songs about paying homage to my roots. They're aiming his life by enrolling in a rehabilitation program in Nashville that lasted for 30 days. He said, "I knew I couldn't do it alone," and he was right. I had to face the fact that alcohol was running my life, not me. Because of the rigorous nature of the program, he was compelled to confront not just his addiction, but also the insecurities and pressures that had contributed to its development. He explained, "Being in the spotlight is a difficult situation. You are still a human being, despite the fact that people expect you to be this larger-than-life figure. Because I was so frightened of disappointing other people, I would drink in order to dull my anxiety. However, it did nothing but make the situation even more dire." Maintaining sobriety was not an easy task. According to Colton, the first few months were a struggle against appetites and concerns about one's own abilities. He placed a significant amount of trust in his family, particularly in his older sister, who had triumphed over her own battles with addiction many years previously. He also found refuge in composing, during which he poured his experiences into lyrics that were raw and honest. These words would eventually serve as the foundation for his second album, which was titled Sober Sunrise. The album Sober Sunrise, which was released in the beginning of 2025, has been described as a work that will define Colton's career since it combines his signature storytelling with a newly discovered vulnerability. With lyrics such as "I traded the bottle for a clearer view / found my way back to the man I knew," the lead single "One Day at a Time" is a touching ballad that tells the story of his path to recovery. This song has been extremely well received by fans, as seen by its ascent to the 3rd spot on the Billboard Country Airplay chart. In addition, Colton managed to make amends with Bryan, who extended an invitation to him to return to Crash My Playa in 2024 for a performance of redemption. "Luke didn't have to give me another shot, but he did," Colton stated in response. "I was sober when I walked out there, and I brought my full attention to the task at hand. When I was surrounded by people, I had the sensation that I had at last returned to being myself." Now that he has been sober for 2 years, Colton is determined to use his position to bring attention to the issue of addiction in the music professional community. He maintains a partnership with MusiCares, a charitable organization that provides assistance to musicians who are battling substance misuse, and he frequently gives speeches at recovery events. "If my story can help even one person realize they're not alone, it's worth telling," he stated to reporters. When Colton thinks back on his trip, he is thankful for the opportunity that has been presented to him to start over. "That disaster at Crash My Playa could have ended my career, but instead it saved my life," he explained to reporters. "I'm not proud of who I was that night, but I'm proud of who I'm becoming." Colton is concentrating on maintaining his groundedness as he gets ready to embark on a headline tour in the year 2026. He has substituted bar crawls in the wee hours of the morning for early morning runs, and he has substituted black coffee for whiskey. "Sobriety doesn't fix everything," he conceded to reporters, "but it gives you a fighting chance to build something real." Fans may view Colton's comeback as a demonstration of his ability to persevere and find atonement. And for the man himself, it serves as a reminder that even the thickest of nights can eventually give way to a more brilliant dawn.